the first page. If you need a pen, there's pens over here. Anyone? Okay. And a crayon. So if you're really special, you can use the crayon. Okay, so why are we here? Why are we bothering to talk about personal finance? Because it's really easy not to, especially in the church where we think, okay, if we just give our 10%, we're good, or that's something we can't talk about because we can't know how much each other makes, or it's all a big secret, right? Well, I say we need to bother because first off, number one, it's not yours. I think that's something we can all agree with. This is a stewardship matter, it is a heart matter, and it's something we need to bother with big time because we are managing it, and the way that we used to manage our money, if we were working for a big company and they hired us to manage their money, they would have fired me because I would have gotten them into debt. I would not have been able to tell them where their money was going, and they would have said goodbye. So we are going to learn how to manage our money because it's a stewardship issue. We don't want to get fired from our own finances. And the second reason, straight out of Proverbs 22, the borrower is slave to the lender. And if you have debt, that debt is telling you what to do with your money. And the only way you get out of it is to either declare bankruptcy, but you can't even do that to all of your debt, or to go ahead and pay it off. So let's do that fast. Reduce waste, that has to do with the first one also. If you don't know where your money is going, and if you can't tell yourself even where it's going, it goes to places where you don't even know, and it's just wasteful. 4, to be able to retire with dignity. Everyone in here is really relatively very young. I'm going to include myself in that also. We are 20, 30, 40 years away from, or even more, from retirement. But it's still something we need to be thinking about and preparing for. And one of the first ways to do that is to eliminate debt. So that we're not 65 thinking, oh, I have to retire, but if I do that, oh wait, is Social Security, oh well, they went bankrupt. And then I'm like, oh, what are we gonna do? And what's our option? Well, I don't want to be eating dog food for the rest of my life. So I'm gonna figure this out. Number 5, give. That is the whole point. The end game is to be able to be outrageously generous. I think we can be sacrificially generous while we're on this journey. But the end game is to be able to help people. Next one, money is amoral. Not good or bad. Right? There's not, it's what we do with it. Right? So a dollar bill sitting there, it's not doing something bad. It's not doing something good. But what are we going to do with it? We can use it for evil. We can use it for good. So we have to be able to tell our money what to do. And the last one, did you know that the #1 cause of divorce in the U.S. is money fights and money problems? Okay, not saying that you're headed down that road, but if you clear it up, why not make have yourself a little bit easier time in your marriage? All right, slide. Okay, so let's get personal. It's personal finance, right? It's about you. So I want to be pretty transparent with this, and Andre says it's okay. So I want to tell you a little bit about our story and where we came from. So Andre and I were married in 1999 when some of you were like 7. Right? So I came from a family that their only debt was a mortgage, and they had it on a 15-year loan. My parents paid off their house when I was in my early years of college, but other than that, we didn't do credit cards. We drove clunkers for cars. At one point, we had a 73 Chevelle Malibu, that was powder blue. It sat outside, it rusted because it's Minnesota and that's what cars do in Minnesota. And so my dad thought, well, I'll sand it a little bit and then I'll spray paint it a little bit, and oh, now it's blue with gray polka dots. It rusted a little more. The other car was a little bit rusty too, but it was a little bit nicer, so he actually bought paint to match that one, which happened to be brown. But the Malibu, he's like, oh, I better take care of that too. So now it's blue with brown and gray polka dots. So it's sitting outside. Oh, the windows don't roll up all the way anymore, so it's kind of leaky. Oh, so the back seat starts to get a little funky. Mom puts gray fur cover on it. That was not great either. Oh, wait a minute, the bottom fell out of the back. So we're in the Flintstone car. And then by this time, I was coming home from school in the summer. I didn't have a car. I used my parents' car. Dad, every time I turn right, the horn honks. Every time I turn on the blinker, it shocks me. Finally, the ignition, Dad had to do some work on it, but he didn't put it back where it was supposed to be. He put it over here. So to turn on the car, well, he didn't use a key anymore either. He had a 10-peg. So we reached over, flipped a switch over here to make the car run. So, and as funny as that is, there was a payment on it. And that's cool. Because we all think, right, oh, we have a car. We have to take out a loan or have a lot of money. They have a much better car, by the way, which they pay cash for. But that was my growing up, and it was kind of embarrassing, I have to say. But it's really fun now. It's for a good story. But that was my family. Ray's family also not big into credit cards and a mortgage on the house. But we didn't come from families that had a lot of debt. When we got married, Andre was just coming back from Saipan, his year of teaching in Saipan, where I think he started out at $16,000. So not a ton. But it was enough to live on. He got back and decided to join the Air Force. We got married, and we thought, we need a nicer car. Why? I don't know. We bought the cutest little 1995 black Volkswagen Jetta. It was cute. But we took a loan out on it. It was $5,000 loan. We paid it off pretty fast. But still, why couldn't we not have saved up for it and bought it? Because we had a running car. So, let's see, what's next? He joined the Air Force. We were living in Montgomery, Alabama. He left for the Air Force, and he didn't come home for 6 months. So, who runs the budget during that time? He was too busy learning to march. So we figured out pretty fast that this could happen anytime. Okay? He was in the Air Force. They could go for 3 to 6 months a year. So the day-to-day stuff was going to have to be me. I wouldn't say that I was necessarily equipped to handle that because I did have a credit card and I did run it up. I didn't run it up hugely, but I ran it up enough so that I had a balance. That my husband didn't know about. That's not good. So eventually, we fixed that situation. He showed me a lot of grace and a lot of love through that. So fast forward 10 years. Andre had a diagnosis of Crohn's disease, which after about 6 years after diagnosis, the Air Force decided, oh wait, we don't think you're fit for duty anymore. Okay. We had no debt at the time, which was good, but we didn't have an emergency fund. We had one really, really horrible weekend where we did not know what we were going to do. We were in base housing, so we were going to need to move out. Yeah, we just, like, oh. Luckily, Andre had a clue that this was going to happen, and that happened on a Friday, and he had a job on Monday. So same amount of money, but suddenly we had to pay for our housing. So that was, when you're living in the DC area and we decided to buy a house, that's a big chunk of money that we were not used to living without. So I decided that I would become the coupon queen. I didn't want to go back to work. We had Peter and Annika at the time. So how was I going to bring in some money? Well, I was going to have to save it. So my dad calls this a woman's hunter-gatherer instinct. Be able to bring in something like that. So I got all of our toothpaste for free. I got all of our shampoo for free. I got a good portion of our food for free. I cut our monthly food budget down to about $300, which for a family of, we were a family of 4 at the time, that is nothing. So yeah, that was my contribution. But through all this, we knew we just had to be better about this stuff. And so, yeah, not having any debt doesn't get you out of the responsibility for your money. You still have to know where it goes. For many of those reasons that we listed earlier. So, now you know. When we moved here, Andre, again, on paper it looked like he took a significant pay cut, but because we don't pay for our housing here, it's actually a raise, which means that we get to save while we're here. So that is good. Questions? Okay, so what I wish I had known back then was about a guy named Dave Ramsey. I can't say that I agree with everything that he says. He's friends with Joel Osteen, so but he has solid stuff to say, and so we're going to talk about the 7 baby steps to, he calls financial freedom. And so this will take you all the way from today through retirement and to the rest of your life. Slide. First, I call them the 7-ish baby steps because I think there's an important first one that he leaves out. And so step 0 is no more. If you want to get out of debt, you have to stop getting yourself into debt. And if you have a credit card problem, why are you looking at me like that? You're smiling. If you are in credit card debt, you have to stop. And if you want me to come over and cut them in half, or whatever, I'm happy to do that. But the bleeding has to stop, because this will not do you any good if the money is still going to places where it shouldn't. And so I'd say that is a really, really, really hard step. But if you're going to take it, it's going to be worth it. So done, finished, checked. Another thing I want to add here is that it's a lot easier to spend with a credit card than it is to spend cash. And so I know there have been studies done on people handing over cash, and it actually activates the pain receptors in your brain. It hurts a little bit more when you plunk down cash and then you look at your wallet as it's gone. McDonald's did a study even on cash versus credit card. When you pay with cash there, their average sale is $4.50. Their credit card sales, their average sale is $7. That's pretty significant. So we use cash for darn near everything. We do actual 7 baby steps. Step number 1, save $1,000 for emergencies. And when I did the little survey over the last couple of weeks, I know that probably half the people who took this survey do have some sort of savings. And so saving $1,000 would be your first step to getting out of debt. Now, you save it as fast as you can. 1 month, 2 months, cash under your mattress, savings account, whatever. It's not intended to make you money, it's not an investment. This is for when you get sick. This is not for when the shirt is on sale. This is for emergencies. No, it is not enough. $1,000 is not a big enough emergency fund. Statistically, every 10 years you will have a medical event that costs you between $5,000 and $7,000. But it's a baby starter emergency. Here, I would say you need to be able to pay for plane ticket. If something happens to a family member, to you, or to South Korea as a whole, have enough for plane ticket. Okay, slide.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Like emergency funds. So, what's like the difference? Well, I know there's a difference between certain emergency fund and savings. But like for me, I could use this as $1,000 at Bank of America, but I don't feel like that's very mindset.
Well, one thing, you need to be able to access it very, very quickly. And then, yeah, the other thing is that it has to be earmarked, because otherwise it can get spent.
Like one thing that Jessica and I have done is we've actually created a separate savings. It's a savings account, but that is our emergency fund, and it just sits there. We don't. I mean,
Yeah,
we
it's
keep
actually at a
track of it
separate
bit,
bank.
but it's a whole separate bank, whole separate account. It's just, it's not even really like if someone said, "Hey, how much money do you have?" I wouldn't even really think of having that money. It just sits in its whole separate account. But even if you just earmark, like Jessica said, in whatever checking account or savings account you have, it's
Alright, we go. Okay, so the debt snowball. This is how you take care of your debt. So the first step is to list your debts in order from smallest to largest. So that's what I've done over here. So I've got an example for you. So in this example, we've got $500 in medical bills, $2,500. Oh, by the way, I speak in dollars. Andre gets paid in dollars, so I speak in dollars converted to one if you need to. So $2,500 in credit card debt, $7,000 car loan, and $10,000 student loan. So I've listed them in order. In parentheses is the minimum monthly payment. And I'll tell you why we do it smallest to largest. Okay, so you are going to pay, you have to pay, or you will incur huge charges. Pay the minimum. Now, we will be creating an actual budget in the second half of the class. But what you're going to attempt to do after you figure this all out and after you look at your budget is how much extra can you pay on this stuff. Okay, so for example, we're really trying to get out of debt, so we've cut our dining out budget, we've cut out our clothing budget as much as we can. We've pared it down, and we found another $500 in our budget, and we're going to use that to pay our debt. So we're going to start paying the first one, the smallest one, okay? Paid it off in less than a month. It was $500. We had $500 in our budget, and it's gone in a month. Okay, so it's called a snowball because your snowball was $500, but you were paying $50 on that other one every month, so now your snowball has grown a little bit. So now you've got $550. Well, you were paying $63 on the credit card debt, so now it's gotten a little bit bigger. Okay, so now you're up to $613, and you are paying that credit card as fast as you can. which at that rate it will be done in 4 months. So now you go to the next one. You add in that $135 that you were paying, and you are up to $748. Okay, you're paying that every month on time, and it will be done in 10 months. Okay, that's 3 down, 3 gone in 15 months. Okay, so now you've only got one left. You had been through all this, faithfully paying the $96 minimum payment. Okay, now you have a total of $844 to knock out that student loan in 12 months. Okay, so this is how, in my example, we have paid off $20,000 in 27 months.
With the opposite being, we just kept paying the $96 a month, I don't know, $1,000 student loan, paying it for years and years.
So when I got out of school, and I don't know if this has changed, but they automatically put you on a 10-year payment. Same? That's not, what could you be doing with that money if you didn't have to make that payment? So on a credit card, if you have a $10,000 credit card bill and you pay the minimum payments on it, because interest rates on credit cards are insane, right? It will take you 8 years to pay off, and in the end, you will have paid over $30,000. Now, there is another way to do this, and that is by interest rate. And so it's what I have down here. It's called the debt avalanche, which is another system. I think maybe Larry Burkett or Susie Orman or one of the other finance gurus has called it the debt avalanche, and that is where you do not list from smallest to largest, but you list in order of interest rate. Okay? You can do that. And in some cases, it might make sense if you have, you know, a 20, 26% interest rate on something like your, because credit cards are like that. However, if that first one is a big one, you're probably going to lose steam on it. So it's done this way because in 1 month you can see progress. In 4 months you can see major progress. In just over a year, you've got 3 knocked out. Okay? So it's a psychological thing, it's not a math thing. And if you have ever listened to Dave Ramsey, the big thing he says is that getting out of debt is 80% behavior and 20% math. No idea where he came up with that number. However, it makes sense. Because, yeah, personal finance, personal, emotional, and hard. So making quick progress will help to keep you motivated. Exceptions to the rule, because there's always exceptions, right? Number 1, if you are American and you owe the IRS, because they are happy to come after you and they can garnish your wages. Number 2, if you owe debt to a family member, get that taken care of. Don't owe your family. It's not fun. Even when they say, oh, don't worry about it, it puts a strain on your relationship that you might not even know is there, but it's on their side, or it's on your side but not their side. It's a hard thing to owe a family member. The other thing would be if, say, 2 of these debts had a similar payoff, maybe within $50 or $100, pay off the highest interest rate that you want. The other exceptions would be if you have some sort of debt that is a 90 days same as cash, or a 6 months same as cash, or 12 months same as cash, because at the end of that, if you have not paid it, they will calculate your interest from the beginning. Okay? So get rid of those because they are bad news. And then 2 more, babies and layoffs. Not too many of you in here will be getting pregnant anytime too soon, I don't think, but if you are in the middle of your debt snowball and you find yourself pregnant, you stop the snowball. You still pay your minimums, and you put away money. Take that $500 and stick it in a savings account. Okay? Mom and baby come home and they're fine. Shove it all back at your debt snowball. Okay? The other thing, you get new. Maybe you hear school's not going to renew your contract. You're going to be moving back home, or you're going to get laid off. Minimums on your debt snowball. Put that money away. Okay? That money will be for getting you settled in a new location or during the time that you are unemployed. Okay? Any questions? More questions on that?
One of the simple questions, but like, what is savings cash, like 90-day savings cash?
Okay, so for example, Andre and I have done this. We bought a mattress. Okay, it was $1,000. The store says if you pay us in 6 months, it'll be just like you paid cash. So we would owe them $1,000. However, if we don't pay that off at the end of 6 months, they start charging interest, and they will go back and calculate interest from the day you took the mattress home.
Yeah, it's
Interest from day one, like what about, oh my gosh, it's terrible.
Okay, and they are usually 22 to 25%.
right, and the store, it's a great selling technique because they'll say, hey, you can buy this and there's no interest or anything, but they don't really press you to make payments for those first 6 months, right? It's only after the 6 month no interest period is up that all of a sudden then you get a bill in the mail that says, okay, you didn't pay your bill, so now here's the $1,000 you owe us, plus it's already earned $300 interest or whatever.
And usually it's not the furniture store coming after you. Usually they are either working with a finance company or they will do the financing themselves and then immediately sell it to someone else. So it won't be the furniture store coming after you. It'll be a collector. Ashley?
Are you gonna talk about like credit score?
I will talk about credit score. Okay, another thing to most likely avoid, but it's not always a bad thing, is debt consolidation. And the biggest reason for that is in the US, you do not get out of student loans unless you, unless you die.
Oh, wow.
Okay? Now, if you consolidate your student loan with a finance company and you put in there the mattress you bought and the car you bought and the $300 pair of shoes you bought to a finance company, the student loan got paid off. And no matter what, you will have to pay that off all the time. Like, you're not going to get out of it, I guess is what I'm saying. But the student loan in the US, you can call your student loan, whatever they're called, processor. Thank you. You can get hardship payments that are lower, but you're not going to be able to do that so much with a finance.
You might answer this, so that people don't remember, but like at what point would you, probably different for everybody, but like, as you're saving, at what point do you say, alright, I have enough savings, now I'm just gonna throw all of this to
After you have $1,000. $1,000.
$1,000, or more here,
More, yeah. You need a plane ticket home is what I say. If you have $10,000 sitting in a bank account right now, and you're serious about getting out of debt, drop it down to a plane ticket and get rid of this. The guys.
Here.
Yeah, I did. I actually know actually.
Carrie.
But I don't know if I'm allowed to ask. Okay.
I might make you wait, but
The plane ticket thing and the 3 to 6 months of expenses, are they separate? You save enough to have a plane ticket and 3 months of expenses?
no, I won't.
Okay.
Again.
And then
But I will cover because on a lot of those things, you'll have the medical that's at 1% and you'll have the credit card that's at 25%, and they're like, oh, well, we'll give you 20%. Well, then you just raised that up. And so that's number one. Only do it if you get a significantly better interest rate. And number two, what was number two? Number two is that when you do this and you figure out how long it's going to take you to get out of debt, usually interest rate is not your problem. Usually it will maybe get you another month, maybe two. So interest rate is not generally your problem. Generally, it's more lack of discipline or lack of funds. But usually interest rate is not your problem. So with that's, you also, if you do it, those credit cards better be cut.
Well,
I won't let you in.
when you consolidate that, don't they report it to the credit agency too? Does they get reported?
I would think so.
Yes.
Yeah, because they, then it will show up as one debt on there.
One other thing too, you mentioned the 3 to 6 months, and I think that's step 2, right? So that's a different, the idea is that step 1 is first you just like get that no-kidding emergency fund set aside, that, and which in this context we said, you know, enough to basically like get you back to America or Canada or wherever, you know, the plane ticket home. So that's the first part. Then you get rid of the debt, and then you move into this step 3, is it, Jessica? Which is the
Yep.
3 to 6 months.
Are we good on step 2? Next slide, Amoka. All right. Step 3, 3 to 6 months of expenses. Okay, so I will tell you what Andre and I do. We have 3+ months of expenses at our current living standard. If Andre were to lose his job, we would not buy clothes. We would significantly cut our groceries. We would do all of these other things that would last. So what we have saved would last us significantly longer than 6 months even. Okay. So we wouldn't be saving for our trips. We wouldn't. We probably wouldn't drive as much. All those things that are in our budget now, they would either go or be cut significantly. Okay. So I'm, and Andre has a fairly stable job, so I am comfortable with having 3 months. And then we talked about this a little bit earlier, but what is an emergency? Not the shirt that's on sale, not the new car down payment, it's not an emergency. The other thing is that if Andre and I have an emergency, say we suddenly have a $1,000 medical bill, first thing we will do is cut our budget and try to pay it just out of our monthly cash flow. Okay? And try our darndest to not touch the emergency fund. Because as soon as you touch the emergency fund, you start going back steps. Okay? So the first step in using your emergency fund is to not use it. And to, try to cash flow it instead.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that some investment accounts, you can have like a certain amount that stays liquid in case of the emergency, or like there are some accounts where you can pull, like why?
Okay. Emergency fund you need to be able to get your hands on within 24 to 48 hours. Okay? So if you have a fund that you can do that with, go for it. Okay? But the purpose is not to make money. It's not an investment. Do you know what inflation is in the U.S.?
I think it's 4.
4% average. Average. Some years it's higher, some years it's lower. Lately it's been a little bit lower. But 4%. So we have a savings account that has our emergency fund in it. It's with Discover Bank. I think it brings in 0.9, and that's really, really good for a savings account. Okay? actually losing money on it. And in this situation, that's okay. Because it's not about making money with an emergency. It's about having whatever. Questions on this one? Okay, next slide, Annika. Alright, next page. Step number 4. This one's a little tricky. We're in Korea and I know nothing about Korean investment. There you go. I will tell you what we do. Andre gets paid in US dollars, so all of our income is reportable to the IRS. It's not like when you're here for a few years and you just let the IRS know if you've made less than $100,000 or whatever the limit is for that year. So all of our money is taxed. Thank you very much, America. And the good thing about that is that we can use the first one there, IRA or Roth IRA. Anyone know anything about that? Okay, so I'm going to go over this with you just briefly so that you know, right? You most likely cannot do it in this country while you are earning money here. If you have a partial income in the U.S. That is taxable there, then you could. So 15% of income to retirement. The IRA, you can take a portion of your income and invest it, and it is not, the IRA is not, the money you put in there is not taxable on the front end. So you put it in a fund, say some mutual funds, which is what Dave Ramsey and most finance people recommend. And it grows. And it grows. When you take it out, once you have to be at least 59 and a half to take it out, you are taxed on it as your income. So regular income tax applies to what you take out. If you do a Roth IRA, it is taxed up front, but not at the end. Okay? So it is usually a better idea to do the Roth IRA because you are not, while it doesn't reduce your taxable income, you won't get taxed on the growth, which is usually significantly more, hopefully.
Just a warning about the Roth IRA. Kind of like started one last summer, and when we were living overseas, because we were tax exempt, so we had no idea that it's actually illegal if you already have like a tax exemption from the states or the country you're living in. So we had to actually pull all that money out, and so just a warning about that. Make sure you look up all the rules, because the company that we put it into is Edward Jones, and the representative had no idea, and neither did we. So then we were taxed on it big time later.
Yeah. So whatever investing you do, I am not your financial advisor.
What are you supposed to do if you have one? Are you supposed to be doing anything with it? Or
Okay, so if you, okay, so Andre and I put the max, which is $5,500 this year, right? If it's 50, it is 5,500. If you are over age 50, it's 6,500. Okay, so we each put that money into. We have an account. We have one with USA and one with Vanguard. We send our money to them, and they invest it in mutual funds that we tell them to. Okay, so if you look on Vanguard's website or Fidelity's website or anything like that, they will list all of their funds. We want their expense, how much of our money they're paying in fees, to be really, really low, like 1% or less. After we do that, we usually don't touch it, okay? But you can move your money around within funds. Sometimes it might cost you. So I'd say when you're investing like that, you want to invest or not, make sure you're not touching it for 5 years because the market goes up and down, want to be able to ride that out, keep purchasing, purchase when it's high, purchase when it's low, and get a better return that way. Now, I said you have to be 59 and a half to pull it out. If you pull it out before then, you get taxed on it a lot. Okay, so the only way you pull it out is number 1, to avoid bankruptcy, number 2, to avoid foreclosure on house. Okay? Otherwise, a 401k and a Roth 401k are basically the same, except they are managed by your employer. If you leave an employer and have had a Roth 401k or a 401k, you can roll it over into a Roth or a Roth IRA, or an IRA or a Roth IRA. And the reason to do that is so that you have the control of the money, not your former employer. As long as you don't touch the money, you don't get taxed on it. Like if you decided to take your money out of your 401k and you took it and then you waited a few months and were like, ooh, and then you put it in a Roth 401k or an IRA, or anyway, my tongue's getting tied. You'll get taxed on that as income, like you took it out, like you took your retirement funds.
But if I could just add to that, I mean, the question of, let's say you had one of these vehicles back in the States, and then you came here, and so you haven't really done anything with it. Like Jess Cash was saying, definitely check to make sure if you can contribute like overseas or not, and apparently it looks like you probably can't, like Jessica was saying, because if your income isn't, taxable or reported in the U.S., you probably shouldn't contribute to it, but if you just let it sit there, that's okay. I mean, it can continue to grow and do whatever it needs to do. It's more just a matter of can you add to it while you're not getting U.S. income? And it sounds like just cash that the answer is no, more or less. Yeah.
Is that different though for a Roth 401k versus
Yes.
Like could use, well, if you have a U.S. employer.
right?
Yeah.
Our situation's weird because it's like we're U.S. It's a U.S. organization, but yeah.
You guys have someone employed at your school that tells you what to do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How about
Yeah.
this? Yeah, but there's something that-
Yeah. And I think that's, like Jessica said too, that the main point here is to think about, hey, after you've done, step 0, gotten out of the lifestyle of using debt as your daily way to live, using credit cards, and step 1 of having that $1,000, and what is step 2 again?
Snowball.
Paying off all the debt and then saving up. So once you've accomplished those things, then you're in a position where you're going to be able to really save towards your retirement. And I think just like you were saying, this is a little bit focused on sort of the American U.S. way, with the idea that for a lot of us that will be something that either a year or 3 or maybe 5 years from now will be something that's an option. But even if the specific vehicles aren't available, I'm sure there are ways. If you're intending to live in Korea for the rest of your life, you can apply the same basic principle of save up some money, pay off your debt, save up some more money, and then start really being serious about saving for your retirement. So the principle holds even if the vehicle of a Roth or a 401k or those things isn't.
Yeah, there's plenty of mutual funds options that you can just put it in, but the reality is it will just be taxed differently, more than you would with either an IRA or 401k. But yeah, the same principle applies. You should definitely, if you're out of debt, as soon as you can, definitely be putting into something that will make you money.
Right. That's the basic principle.
When did you have a question?
I think you kind of answered it. So step 4, these are all in order. So
Yes.
if you're not out of debt, you shouldn't be doing step 4.
Get your debt paid off. Okay? It's like a ladder. Okay? Step 1. Okay? You don't jump up to step 4 because you're gonna be like
What if you have like a $70,000 snowball?
something that a lot of people have faced and dealt with and gotten out of. I mean, I don't know exactly what our total was. You know, when
I know.
when we had, Jessica had student loans, I had student loans. You know, Jessica talked a little bit about the credit card issue where, you know, that was debt that I didn't even know about. I was like, oh, that's really nice, whatever. Or where did
Diaper bag.
yeah, where did we get that? Or like, how do we pay for that? You know, and things just kind of appeared in the house. But I mean,
He still loves it.
yeah, but I say that just to say, you know, I mean, I don't know if it was 70,000 or not, but it was a lot. It was a lot of money. And you look at it and you're like, oh my goodness, how are we doing this? But you know, just tackling them one at a time and knocking them out is the way to do it. And I really think this idea of having the reason you save is so that you don't have to get more debt, right? If you don't have that money saved up for the ticket, then you're going to be like, oh, but it's an emergency. I've got to use my credit card. I've got to take on some more debt to do this. And so the reason you save is so that you don't, so that you can not add more debt to what you already have.
So I had 20,000 coming out. Now this was, I've been graduated for almost 16 years. So inflation rate is 4%, but college goes up at 7. Okay, so it goes up faster than the inflation. Andre had parents who worked for the college we went to, so he did not have tuition. He came out with half the student loans that I did. So, but that's another thing to think about when you're getting married. You will become one, and their debt will be your debt.
It happened to me.
I know. I more than doubled Andre's debt just by marrying him.
I know, it's almost a deal breaker.
Okay, but the point is that, yeah.
Very much funny. Like it matters. What we have might disqualify us from other people. What other people have might disqualify them for us.
I will say that debt itself is not a deal breaker to get married. Okay? Attitude about debt might be. Okay. So they're like, oh, but that student loan, I think we can actually do it more like 20 or 30. That's something you need to talk about. But it's, you took it out, it's your responsibility, you're gonna work hard, and it's gonna get paid. You can do it. Okay, next one, TSP. Same sort of thing as a 401k, it's for federal government employees. I used to work for Social Security Administration, I have a small TSP. I leave it there if Andre's gonna start talking again. But we look at it probably once a year, it's still there. I can't touch it till I'm 59. Okay. The other one is a 403b, and as teachers, if you're in the U.S., this will be your version of a 401k. It's just managed by the city. Or
And what do I company, as a company contribute towards your IRA 401k? Do it invoice because it's basically free money.
so when, and that's what, always take the match first. Always. When Andre was in the military, he had a TSP account. The military did not match it. Whatever. Now, each agency does it a little bit differently in the government. Now he's matched up to a certain percent. I don't know what it is, 3% or something. 3%. And 3%, and then it's like for every 2% you put in, they'll put in 1, or for every 3% you put in, they'll put in 1. So take your matches first. So I would say take your match first. Second, if your employer offers it, because not all of them do.
Yeah, and it's not just for federal government employees. So like a lot of employers in your 401k, which is the retirement plan that your employer will offer you, they'll say, hey, you know, for the first 10 up to 10% that you give, we'll give like a 0.5% for each 1% you give, or something like that. So you sign up and you say, yeah, take 10% of my salary each month and put it into this retirement account. They're going to contribute another 5%. That's not part of your pay, but that's just their contribution to your retirement account, which is 5% of your pay that you would not get if you weren't contributing 10%. It's an incentive to save.
Now, so there are certain companies that will, usually bigger companies will do 401k, sometimes the smaller ones don't. There are other stipulations along
I have
Yeah,
a
go ahead.
question. The 403B, I'm assuming that's just for public school teachers.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm sure there are more rules on it, but it's a common one for teachers. Not all districts participate.
Okay.
But I know there's a lot of teachers here who may go back to teaching in the US, so just tuck that away.
I have a question about that. I have one from teaching in the States. I just left it there in that same account. Is that all right?
Yeah, it's fine. However, if you, I believe, and you need to talk with someone else about this, but I believe you can roll it into an IRA. The benefit being that you would have control over it instead of a city or a county or whatever telling it, okay, well, we can put it in this mutual fund and this mutual fund. If you have it in an IRA, then you say, I want it in this mutual fund. How much do you need to retire? If you take your savings, multiply it by 8%, that's how much you would have to live on per year. Assuming that your money is still growing, if you take out 8%, that is about the figure that you would have to work with. So, if I have $100,000 saved for my retirement, that's not a lot, okay? So if I want my money to keep growing at a good rate, and I'm gonna take out 8%, $8,000 to live on per year. Is that enough? Okay. If you go to www.chrishogan360.com, you put in what kind of lifestyle you think you would want, how much money you have saved. It will tell you how much money you need to save, and if you're on track or not. Okay. And I just put a quote on there. It's like some old Swedish proverb or whatever, that worry gives small a big shadow. Okay? When we worry, these little things blow up. Okay, so if you want to know how much you need for retirement, check out that website. Who was it? Anna? Carrie?
I didn't get it.
Who had a question?
Oh,
You
you had a question.
I did, but I know what she's asking.
Do you guys,
Yeah.
wait, investment, do you guys buy any other things like silver, gold?
So, it,
Well, I will tell you two things about that. We do not buy bonds. We do not buy invest in CDs. We don't do gold and silver. Well, we might have a fund that does.
yeah. So Jessica does the day-to-day.
He's more of our long-term
the
investment.
long-term investment stuff. So, we buy mutual funds, and like Jessica's saying, some of those things may invest. Like we actually have a precious metals mutual fund, which I don't really like. I'm gonna get rid of, but it invests in some gold, some silver, some copper. I don't know what other precious minerals. But yeah, investing is almost like a whole nother workshop outside of getting a whole lot on personal finance. But in a nutshell, I would say for investing, what you want is you want to have a broad. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right?
And I will. I didn't ask my dad if I could share this, but I'm going to share it anyway. When I was young, I remember gold and silver being a hot thing to invest in, and my dad did, and he has gold and silver sitting in his basement. And it is not worth. It's probably worth 10% of what he paid. And that was a long-term investment for him, and it's sitting down there because the value of gold and silver is just really volatile. And you say, oh well, if everything crashes and our money isn't worth anything, at least gold will still be worth something. Well, it's only worth whatever someone would take for it.
What are your thoughts on investing in real estate?
Use cash. Otherwise, it will not be a blessing to you because something will go wrong. You'll have to replace carpet, or you won't be able to keep a tenant in it, or whatever. I mean, we kept our house when we moved because we don't plan on going back to it. But we had a mortgage on it, and it was not worth it. I'd say if you want to invest in real estate or really anything, use cash. Don't go into it. All right, next slide. Okay, I don't know, can you guys see the numbers on that? This is just an example. It's the story of Ben and Arthur. It's a big one that Dave Ramsey uses, and the whole, might question the numbers slightly, but the point is the same, and that is to start investing early if you're out of debt. So the example starts, Ben starts saving money at 19 years old. He saves $2,000 a year until the age of 26, a total of 8 years. After that, he never invests another dime. That's really hard to see. Okay, Arthur starts saving money at 27 years old. He saves $2,000 a year until age 65, almost his entire life. At the end of the story, Ben, who invested only $16,000, ends up with $2,288,996. Arthur, who put in $78,000, ends up with $1,532,166. Okay, so the point being, this is an example of compound interest. Okay, the longer you invest, the more you're going to get out at the end. So in this example, the person who started early ends up with more than the person who saved for a longer length of time but didn't start. Okay, so this is assuming a 12% rate of return, which is what the stock market has averaged since it was created. Okay. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower, sometimes the mutual fund is better, sometimes they do worse, but it has averaged that much since the very beginning. So that's what they use for their average. Questions?
So my head foreign teacher was actually talking to me about the stock market, and he basically advised me to just like pump money into one stock.
No.
Yeah.
Not everyone.
Okay. That's why I
Okay, that's the fastest way to end up broke.
Yeah.
And again, not to get into an investing class, but a mutual fund, all it is it's a company or a person or someone saying, hey, we're going to buy stock, individual stocks in 10, 20, 100, 500 different companies. And so when you do that, so let's say you put your $10,000 into McDonald's, well, all of a sudden there's a global salmonella poisoning outbreak and McDonald's goes out of business. What they go out of business means your $10,000 is part of their business, it's gone. Whereas if you put that in a mutual fund, yeah, you probably bought a very small little bit of McDonald's share, but hey, if McDonald's goes out of business, you also own share in Taco Bell and Hardee's and all the other nasty fast food companies. Luxury. And so they're gonna continue, as businesses. In fact, they might even benefit from the fact that McDonald's went out of business. So, point being, your $10,000 is, slot into those companies, but you'd rather be bought into one or 500 companies, right, than one. It just reduces your risk.
And that's what they're talking about when they're saying playing the stock market. That's playing. Don't play. Invest. Okay, for long term, many companies. Not one.
Yeah, I was very
Yeah, and
skeptical.
the same, also there's this thing called penny stocks, which are super cheap stocks. It's still an individual stock. They're a penny stock because they're really cheap and they're not, a lot of the times not doing very well. Next slide, Annika. Alright. Step number 5. Steps 4, 5, and 6, you can do all at the same time. So we're saving 15% for retirement and funding your children's college fund. Now, Andre and I don't see completely eye to eye on this. I semi-regret going to Dordt College and having that debt. I got a man out of it. I don't regret that.
Right, every penny.
Worth every penny. So, of course, the debate is, should your child pay for their own college? My parents helped me. They did not save for me. Every year that I was there, they cash flowed $3,000. Okay? And Dort was between 15 and 18 or something the whole time I was there. So, a lot of people don't save for their children's college and plan to cash flow all or part of it because they assume that, you know, when your kids turn 18 or whatever, that you will be making, you'll have more of an income at that point, and then you can cash flow your children's college. So there's the debate: do you save? Do you not? We do. It probably will not cover all of that, and I don't know that I even want it to, because I want my children to work while they're in college. I want them to have to, but I also don't want them saddled with a ton of debt. Okay? So I hope for my children to go to a good state school. In state. And I will tell you that the two colleges I looked at very seriously, University of Iowa and Dordt College. I was a Minnesota resident. Minnesota and Iowa did not have reciprocity with each other. So I was going to be paying $28,000 a year to go to a state school if I went to Iowa. Okay? That was almost double what I paid to go to a private Christian school. Okay, so just in state. This is all again probably a long way out for us. So actually, it's not. Don't. But we're not.
I know that, for example, when people are going into college, they have to do their FAFSA, but then they take into account how much money the parents have in their bank account. So is that, so when they look at that, does that make them give you less? So is it now?
It is always better to save. And yeah, when as we save, even if we're saving for something other than our children's college, they're still gonna look at that.
There are ways though to like make it look like you're not, or like depending on how you move around your money as far as the FAFSA is concerned.
That's not something I know anything about except that I did it.
And the other thing too, I mean, is that necessarily a scenario you want your kids in? Federal loans are definitely better, but I don't know how much grant money is going to be around at that point. And if it's not grant money, it's still loan debt, and so.
Yeah, and people talk about good debt and bad debt. It's all bad. It's debt. You know, but when people speak about good debt, it's, in my mind, it's an excuse a lot of times. It's a rationalization. And can also very easily become an excuse to drag it out longer. Well, it was worth the investment, whatever, so I can pay it in 10 or 20 years. So I think wound up being debt.
Did you, I think you have a master's degree. So did you wait to pay off your undergrad before you did your master's degree, or was?
No, I didn't. And actually, Andre asked me the other day, if you knew what you know now, would you still have gotten your master's degree? And I would have waited, and I probably wouldn't have it. And I think that would be okay. I did not get any of the jobs I've had because I had a master's degree.
Yeah. So you think it is best to wait and pay off the undergrad first?
I wish that I would have paid it off and then saved up for my master's degree. Or you can be like Andre and get 2 master's degrees off of your employer.
What about the possibility of getting like a GA or a TA or audit position or something like that? Like,
As in working, as an option to work through college?
yeah, well, yeah, like a lot of times they pay for lots of your tuition debt.
Yeah, when I was looking at PhD programs, I mean, there's a lot of schools that will, you know, if you sign on to be a research assistant or a professor or something, you know,
to apply for scholarships, and in 1 year paid for all 4 years of her school, just through applying for scholarships, which sounds really boring, but whatever. You know, there's ways. There's ways. Right.
I knew someone who did that in high school and university. It helps that he had like a 95% average in the engineering program. But that guy made so much money just off scholarships. Because he would find scholarships that no one else applied to. To be the only candidate, $500. But I was going to say, Nick, it might be different in different schools. The TA thing is a good idea. But be careful because you might be like me and fall in the trap of like staying a graduate student longer because you're TAing. And you do get paid for it, but it doesn't cover your tuition, so it doesn't necessarily even out. So you do run into the trap of like dragging out a degree. That might not be the wisest idea.
But school likes it because they get cheap labor.
And it's good work experience if you like the job, it's fun and stuff, but it just watch. Not good career.
So they say that the 4 things to talk about before you're married: religion, in-laws, kids, and money. So talk about this one. Not a deal breaker, just talk about it. Next slide. Oh, and then I should say that I mentioned there the ESA or the 529. They're those are a little bit like IRAs or whatever. They're after-tax dollars that you can invest for your child. There's a $2,000 limit on the ESA. 529s are run by individual states. And so their programs differ in how much you can put in and how and if there is a state tax benefit. There's no federal tax benefit other than your kid won't have to pay income tax on it when you pull it out. Keep going. Okay, next. Step 6, pay off your mortgage, and I should have put early. Pay off your mortgage early. So this is in 4, 5, and 6 that are done all at the same time. So Dave Ramsey says this is the only debt he'll let you do. And that is because it is the largest purchase that most people ever make. But there's a few guidelines. 15-year mortgage, 20% down at least. Okay, PMI, private mortgage insurance. This is if you default on your loan, the bank has insurance. They can get their money back. I mean, they'll also take your house, but
If you don't put 20%
if you do not put 20% down, you have to pay extra monthly for private mortgage insurance. And then once you have 20% equity, you have to pay to get your home appraised so that the bank knows that you actually have 20% equity in your house, and then they will drop that. There's no veterans in here except for Andre. Okay. So, yeah, there are VA loans. It's another way to get a mortgage. They do not do PMI, but they do a funding fee, which you can get out of if you're a disabled veteran. And you can do 20% or 0% down without PMI. But that's it. Not applicable. Okay. And then, okay, no more than a 15-year fixed rate. Fixed. No variable loans. Okay? This is how everyone got in trouble over the last 10 years. Okay? This is how people said 0 down and only paying interest and for 5 years or whatever. And then suddenly it's like, oh, you owe $400,000, pay it in a month. Okay? And then no one could refinance because their home values had gone down. Okay? That is the big trouble. Okay? Fixed rate.
And fixed rate basically just means that when you sign a mortgage, the percentage rate of interest that you pay, like 4% or whatever, is fixed.
Okay? It will
for
not
the
go
term of
up
the
or
loan.
down for 15 years.
Whereas a variable rate, they might say, well, we'll lock you in for 0.9% for the first 5 years, and then it's a variable rate for the next 25 years. Well, you can guess what happens in year 6.
credit score goes down. What if I don't borrow any money? After about a year, you know what happens? You have no credit score. You close all your accounts, you pay off your debt, in a year you have no credit score. So you go to buy a house, and they say, you have no credit score. Why would we loan you money? And you say, you have to manually underwrite my loan. Which means instead of calling the credit unions or credit reporting agencies, and there's 3 of them, to find out if you will pay your debt or not, they have to look at bank statements, your income, all these other things, and not many lenders will do that. So there are a few that will, and you just have to find one. Might be a pain in the butt. Dave Ramsey recommends one called Churchill Mortgage, but there are others out there. Small town banks, local banks are more likely to do it. I don't know what else to say about that. Questions?
When you say at least 20 down to avoid PMI, like at least 20% of the mortgage that you're taking out, you should.
Yeah, so if you buy a $100,000 house, you need to be able to go to the table with $20,000 to avoid PMI.
And I'm just repeating back to what you said. So no more than a 15-year fixed rate, like a mortgage that will last 15 years with a fixed rate.
Right. But you're gonna pay it off earlier.
Yeah.
You said people are moving around in the States. How many years do you think it's worth to buy? How many years would you say was buying a house if you know
Mhm.
how
So
long
renting?
you're gonna live?
3 to 5 years is the guideline. If you're going to be in a place 3 to 5 years, you think, then it's recommended to buy. Okay. Andre and I have not been in a house that long, except for the last year. And we purchased 2 houses. After we put work into them, we did not make any money on them.
What about like having a credit card and paying off everything every month?
Well, at the beginning we talked about, yes, you can do that, okay? That's the thing about everyone in this room except for John and Hanukkah, you are adults and you get to do whatever you want. And if you want to have a credit card and pay it off every month, do it. If you want to get out of debt and not, just psychologically not be spending as much, because remember we talked about earlier how you spend more on a credit card as opposed to cash, then just don't do it. You can do it. I would recommend not doing it.
So,
Carrie? Oh, sorry. I'm going to go back to Ashley first.
So do you know a lot about credit scores? Like if you pay it right away or if you wait till the end of the month to pay it, or
It won't make a difference. It's on time or not on time. And I should also be very upfront with you in that I do not have a credit card in my name at all. I use one. It's called a Military Star Card. It is for things that we buy on post, but I use it for gas. It gets me 5 cents off a gallon or something. And I fill up my tank. I go home and I pay it.
so you don't believe in like the benefits of getting a credit card, like the
Okay, so as far as miles and cash back and all that stuff, there's like 90% of people who never cash in their miles. And you're like, that's crazy. Okay, I mean, there's all kinds of things out there. And yeah, you're an adult, you do whatever you want. You're more likely to use airline miles maybe with living here.
Yeah.
But I don't know, if your goal is to get out of debt, maybe no.
Hey, Jessica, the thing to remember with those programs, and I'm a big fan for like getting miles for free or something like that, but
Andre loves miles.
at the end of the day, those programs don't exist for your benefit. They exist for the benefit of the company.
It wouldn't be here.
Yeah, I mean, those, American Express or Delta or they're not in the business of trying to make people feel good and get stuff for free. They're in the business of trying to get people to spend money. And so, yes, is it possible to make some miles and maybe get some benefits? As an adult, yeah, you can make that decision and do, be responsible and do what you want to do. But, yeah, I mean, if you go in with the attitude of, hey, this is, the objective of this is to get me to be a customer. The objective is not for them to say, hey, here's this great deal that you can get cash back. No, they want you to spend money, and they're just going to give you a tiny fraction.
So, and the statistic is that you spend 12 to 18% more with a credit card than you do with cash. The McDonald's example is an extreme example, but 12 to 18%. So, can I take my 12 to 18% and just go buy a ticket? Yeah. And probably cannot have it.
About the credit score and stuff, I think it's still important to have a credit and stuff, even if you don't apply for mortgage or anything else. Because I faced it when I moved to the US. I didn't have any credit history in the US. I couldn't get my home. I couldn't start like water, pay for water, because they didn't have any history. So there was an obstacle for me at the time. Now I have a credit history, but like if you don't have, my sister-in-law, she doesn't have any, and she can't do anything on her own without husband. Like they can get cell phones. I'm sure there are ways around it,
but
it makes
be aware.
it easier.
So the other thing is like when Andre and I went to rent our first apartment together, we had to sign something that said they were going to check our credit. If they hadn't given us an apartment because we didn't have credit, but we had a steady income and we didn't have debt,
Because we rent our house and our mortgage, our company, the managers, they check credit history for you. So I don't know how we should do it without purchasing a house.
Going back, one more question about the credit history thing. So you're saying if you don't use your credit card for, you said a year, then your credit score is
yeah, if you close your accounts,
yeah.
if you just don't use your credit card, but it's still open, it will still show up.
Oh, okay. It's
If you don't have, if you close your accounts, they will drop off after about a year. Okay? And I think it's a little 6 months to a year is what they say, because the 3 different credit reporting agencies all vary.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna move on.
Next slide.
Next slide. Number 7 is an easy one. And I'll read the verse I have to go with this. 1 Timothy 6:17 through 18. As for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty, nor to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. They are to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share those storing up treasures for themselves as a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of what is truly life. Okay, so I think people who have money in the U.S. get a bad reputation because the little man can never get ahead, right? And it's all corporations and the people who have all this money who are controlling us and whatever. But you get to this point, you can be outrageously generous. And we're not doing it because